There are a lot of players that hit free agency in the transfer portal this year. These are what our scouting team has been hard at work ranking these guys, and this is the top 10 players in the portal. We did have a player available in Zachariah Branch, but he and his brother just committed yesterday to Georgia, so he is officially off the board, but you're seeing kind of the biggest movement. John Mateer, the number one quarterback, number one player, he transfers with his offensive coordinator from Washington State to Oklahoma. A lot of moves happening in that top 10. Some new additions to the top 10 too, but when it's time to talk about the top players in the portal, there is only one person we call, and that is Cooper Patagna, who is part of ranking this group, Coop. And so let's go ahead and start with some of the highest rated available player who was available, like I said, but is no longer available, and that is Zachariah Branch. He's a guy that I know that you were very excited about, one of the top 5 players in this transfer portal. He and his brother, the safety Zion Branch, both committing to Georgia. We know the Dogs needed some help at the wide receiver position, but Coop, what do you think about this fit?
Well, I think anybody that watched that game against Notre Dame knows that Georgia needs to get back to being able to attack the deep third, and whether it's Gunnar Stockton or whether it's going to be somebody else, Zachariah Branch will help with that. But it's going to also be interesting. Zachariah Branch, one of the best run-after-catch receiver options in the entire country, especially in this portal. I think this guy's instant offense gives a little bit of a different wrinkle than what Georgia has. We've seen guys like Dylan Bell, they brought over London Humphreys as well. Colby Young was a guy that had some off-field issues, so they need some stability in that room. Georgia has leaned heavily on the transfer portal for the receiver position. They'll have to get back to that as well, but Zachariah Branch, certainly one of the best pure playmakers in the country, and I expect him to have immediate impact in Athens.
And Coop, you know, when you watch the game against Notre Dame, they need somebody like that. They need a guy that can just get the ball in his hands and just do something with it. Because we saw that Mike Bobo is not the most creative guy with their offense. So you need a playmaker. But, you know, just tracking this whole Branch situation, those guys been wanting to get in the portal for a long time. Mm-hmm. And they had a lot of suitors, but it was always a package deal, and the price just kept on going up and up and up. And Georgia said, you know what? Looking at it, we got to get back into this ball game of college football and explosive play. So we'll take 2 for 1 plus the heavy tab in terms of NIL.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of these teams. Yeah, go ahead, Coop.
Yeah, sorry. Zion Branch, too. Listen, we'll talk about the brother. I think a lot of people want to focus on Zachariah, but Zion Branch was a former top 247 player in his own right as well. And safety, as we've seen, we only have 2 safeties ranked in the top 100 of the transfer portal. These guys are really, really hard to come by as well. So I think a lot of people might look at Zion Branch, the brother, maybe as a throwaway, and I would caution you to say that's not the case. This is a guy that can come in, have a role, add some depth to Georgia's defensive backfield, and certainly a position that they put a lot of value in. And the other thing about this is you go back, you look at Georgia when they were at their best offensively, 2 guys that they relied on, Brock Bowers, who was one of the best rookie tight end seasons we've ever seen in NFL history, and then Ladd McConkey as well, who's a 1,000-yard receiver in his rookie season in the NFL as well. Ladd McConkey, just in terms of what he could do at every part of the field, that's a little bit of what Zachariah Branch can do as well. So I look at Georgia trying to say, how can we fill the shoes of 2 guys that in their own right are some of the best players that we've had walk through this program since Kirby Smart has been there. That's what they're hoping to get with Zachariah Branch.
Whew, I know Georgia fans are excited to hear not necessarily comparisons in the way that they play, but the impact that they can make as far as what Brock Bowers was able to do for that offense. As I was saying, we're going to talk about some of these teams as a whole, who they lost, who they gained. USC is definitely one of those teams we're going to touch on, but let's hit on another Trojan player, Emmanuel Pregnon. He's an interior offensive lineman. He's number 2 interior offensive lineman that we have in this class, Coop. What could a new team be potentially getting in him?
Well, you're getting a lot of size, you're getting a lot of athleticism, and you're getting a guy that's played a lot of football. And with offensive linemen, it's kind of one or the other, right? I think the size and the functional athleticism, that is out there. But to be able to get a guy that has played a lot of football, whether it's at Wyoming or USC, that's hard to come by. The thing with Emmanuel Pregnon that maybe that he doesn't have, that some of his counterparts do have, is a position versatility, right? He's locked in at left guard. I think that's what he's going to be. Could he play tackle? Yeah, maybe. But this guy's an interior offensive lineman. You look at some of the other guys in the portal that he's kind of sandwiched in between. Patrick Kudus at Arkansas, the reason that we stuck with him at number one at that position group is because he played left tackle, he played right tackle, he played center. Emmanuel Pregnon is one of those guys. He's a one-position guy, but he's super experienced, he's super high floor, and a guy, quite honestly, that I think if he plays well next season could work his way up into our early day 3 consideration. And looking at the portal, teams are doing a lot better job playing defense. So a lot of people out there are saying, oh, day 3 NFL draft, that's not that flattering. There are a lot of teams right now tripping over each other trying to find this type of talent in the transfer portal.
Yeah, Coop, you hit it nail right on the head. I think this guy probably went in, got his draft grade back, and it's somewhere close, maybe the 4th or 5th round. But when you have a guard, and you know how I feel about guards, I think they're the most important piece of an offense, especially in college football. So when you have that guy, he can come in and he's going to work his way up, maybe into the 2nd or 3rd round, because there's a little bit of tid pieces of his game that's missing that you want to see a little bit more power, more consistency in his balance and body control and being a pass blocker. But if I was a team, I'd go all in on this guy, man, because I think he can really make your team go from 8 to 9 wins to get into that playoffs and become the bully of the block.
He was highly sought after last year in the transfer portal when he transferred from Wyoming to USC. Spent 1 year there and is now looking for another school. How about Tacario Davis? He's our number 1 cornerback, transferring from Arizona. All signs kind of point towards him following his former head coach, Jed Fish, to Washington. But what kind of prospect is he, Coop?
Well, this is a really intriguing one because he's one of the top cornerbacks in the portal. And you think about a guy that had a lot of kind of like day 1 buzz coming into this season, really didn't really play that well this season. It was Emmanuel Carnley, his teammate, who ended up signing with Miami this transfer portal cycle, who got really kind of more of the buzz. So he's trying to find his way back into that conversation. And this is a guy that's really got to rebuild his NFL draft stock. So I think continuity, familiarity, him getting back with Jed Fish, reuniting, and maybe a little slice of some humble pie going up there to Seattle, getting his feet back under him and finding a way to really kind of play himself into the player that a lot of NFL scouts thought he could be, which is a day 1 type of player. He's got a unique blend of size, athleticism, listed at 6'4", hovering around 200 pounds. This guy, when it's right, it's really, really good. But I think the inconsistencies this season were a little bit of a head scratcher. If he does end up at Washington, I think it would be the right fit, the right move for him not to declare, go to the NFL draft. Maybe he's a day 3 guy if he comes out today. If he goes back, goes to Seattle, he's got a chance maybe play himself into a top 50 pick.
Cool. I mean, being a former cornerback myself, sometimes just being in a comfortable situation makes you feel a little bit more at ease and more relaxed. And especially if you have a coach that particularly understands you. And as casual fans, we look at it and say, okay, that player is not playing real well. Forget the athleticism side of it and forget the physical part of it. The mental standpoint of a player means a ton. And from last year, from him wanting to go into the portal, wanting to get out, you just saw a player that wasn't at ease as he was the year before in terms of his playmaking skill. But Coop hit it right on it. Like his size, ball skills, and athleticism, that's what the NFL is looking for. That's what they want. But the inconsistent play scares the heck out of you because you might draft this guy in the 2nd round and he has a couple of mental fumbles and he can't recover from that. So you just lost it on dead money and draft capital in the long run. So get out of there, find a new home, get comfortable, and get back into your groove of playing football.
Yeah, and he did enter the transfer portal the last time around, ended up not entering, staying with Arizona, but now it does look like he will follow Jed Fish to Washington. Another late entrant, Jaden Rashada, which I know is a name that a lot of people know. We don't have enough time to list all the school he's been involved with, Cooper, but when it comes to him as a quarterback prospect, what do you anticipate his market to look like?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Down here at San Antonio at the Navy All-American Bowl, and Chris Hummer's here. We got a majority of our team here at 24/7 Sports. And talking with him, it might not be too dissimilar of a situation that he had this past season with a contender at Georgia. But there are some teams that I think a lot of people would be surprised that are really kind of checking in on Jaden Rashada at the top of the college football mountain that are saying, you know what, this would be a really good insurance policy. Now, for Jaden Rashada in his camp, I think the most important thing is he's kind of had that redshirt year back after transferring from Arizona State. He played early, obviously didn't finish the season out there, transferred to Georgia, got to sit this year behind Carson Beck and Gunnar Stockton. If it was me at this point, I would more than likely think that Jaden Rashada is going to find a place that he can play. But there are some other teams that are really kind of still intrigued with that talent, why he was such a highly sought after high school recruit and a guy that could come in, compete for a job at a top 25 program. We'll see if he opts for that. Or is this going to be a guy that's going to go say, okay, I'm going to go and try to find the quickest path to the field, which at this point I think makes the most sense for him. But it's been a roller coaster since we've started covering Jaden Rashada's recruitment, now the transfer portal recruitment. It's definitely going to be something one day that somebody's going to have to do a documentary about.
Coop, the scary thing about Jaden Rashada, and I spoke to Emily earlier about it, it feels like this guy's becoming like the Bear Alexander of the quarterback position. Like, you see the talent, and you understand the talent, but there's something missing. And at some point in a quarterback's development, you have to stick, learn, and understand what you need to do in order to get more playing time and to become a better quarterback. And it's okay to sit down behind a quarterback that's done it for a long period of time, sit in the same system to understand what your deficiencies are in order to improve your skill set.
Mm-hmm. I just want to ask Coop real quick about Jaden Rashada. If he does go that second path that you mentioned where he tries to get to the field, as soon as possible, is he a quarterback that's ready for that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's kind of what the path has laid out here over the last 2 years or so of his collegiate career. Listen, he played at Arizona State and probably played a little bit earlier than he was supposed to. The other thing about Jaden Rashada coming out, we loved the arm talent. We loved everything physically. But this was the guy with the highest interception ratio of all the guys in the top 247 as well. He needed that year to sit. And the other thing is that this is not just a one of those situations you look like in Athens and say, all is lost here. He got to sit. He got to learn in a pro-style offense under Mike Bobo. He got to go to one of the best cultures under Kirby Smart in the country. And like I said, we've seen this with Dante Moore. We've seen this with some of those young signal callers that are really kind of admitting, having to look at themselves in the mirror and say, you know what, I played a little bit too earlier. Maybe the goals that I set out for myself really weren't that realistic. I need to get my feet back under me. Now it's about finding the right fit. And this is Jaden Rashada's third attempt in 3 years. Now this is the most important attempt for him to find the right fit, that blend of, okay, who believes in me, who believes in my talent, who's going to get the most out of me, and what is the surrounding talent, what does the roster look like, and where can I go to have the best impact? And sometimes that's not the place you want it to be. You might have to take a step back and say, you know what, I want to play at the highest level, I want to play in the Power Four. Look at what G.J. Kinney's done at Texas State, some of the quarterbacks that they've had, Tulane, what they've been able to do with Darian Mensah. The path to where you want to go is not always a straight line, right? So I would caution these guys to do their homework, find the right fit, put themselves in the best position to be successful. And I think that's where Jaden Rashada is right now. He's at a crossroads with his career. He's got to do his homework, something that he hasn't done the last 2 times, find the right place, the right landing spot, and get his career back on track.
All right, so those are some of the top players who are available in the transfer portal. But I also want to ask you about some of the best fits, because you mentioned how Jaden Rashada needs to find that best fit. Who are some players that stand out to you that you're really excited about where they're headed?
How about Isaiah World? Isaiah World's a super intriguing cat, the 6'8", 300-pound plus offensive tackle from Nevada, the #1 offensive tackle in the 24/7 Sports transfer portal rankings. And you think about Oregon, Josh Connerly, the former 5-star, he's off to Sundays. Johnny Cornelius, who they brought over from Rhode Island a couple years ago as well. Leek Terry, the offensive line coach, doing a tremendous job. But talk to some scouts about Isaiah World. They think if he came out this year, this guy could be a potential top 100 draft choice. So that is the type of talent that Oregon's going to be dealing with Isaiah World, a West Coast guy. They get to keep him home. They've done a tremendous job with their player development, not only their talent acquisition program, but I think that's a guy that makes a lot of sense. You go down the list, some other guys as well. David Gusta from Washington State. You think about Kentucky, what they lost on the defensive line. Deion Walker. You also lose Keshawn Silver to USC. Those are 2 guys in the middle that are big pluggers on their interior defensive line. They get that with David Gusta, one of my favorite guys in the middle of the defense. And then Max Claret coming over from Purdue to Ohio State. Tight end position's been one of the sneakiest positions in the entire portal to evaluate. And we had this guy #1 for a reason, over 500 yards receiving. Love what he can do. Reminds me a little bit of Mason Taylor. He's got attachability, can detach him as well. Love what he brings in the receiving game. He is a perfect fit for what Ohio State wants to do in that post-Will Howard era, whether it's going to be Julian Sayin or somebody else. And I could go down the line here. Eric Rivers at Georgia Tech is going to be the guy that's going to have to play a big piece in replacing that Eric Singleton production. This guy comes in, and I like to call him a little bit of a pocket rocket. He's an undersized guy, can stretch the field vertically, can do a lot of different things, and played the majority of his snaps on the perimeter. I think he's a slot. I think they're going to play him where Eric Singleton was primarily used in that offense at Georgia Tech. So, I mean, you go down the board, receivers super deep, offensive line's very thin. So, you know, the portal right now, very, very intriguing as you follow it. And teams, obviously, very, very smart to be aggressive when they see a guy that they like on their board to go out and get him.
Cool. One of my favorite players out of the entire portal was Patrick Payton, edge rusher from Florida State. I know that you're a secret Louisiana fan. What do you think his fit is with coming into LSU and getting them quarterbacks down in the SEC?
Well, I like this one. I think a lot of people will look at this and say, all right, well, his game is kind of tailed off, and I think rightfully so, right? Like, you have to be a fair, objective critic of these guys in the portal. But you go down the list, especially the guys in the top 10, whether it's medical, whether it's character, whatever it is, everybody's got issues, and that's a lot of the reason why they're in the portal. This is a get-right year for Patrick Payton. You talk about the talent. There's no other talent in terms of pass rushers like Patrick Payton in the transfer portal. But now you put him in a system where Braden Swinson came over from Oregon. He's had a huge couple years in Baton Rouge. He's probably going to be a day 2 NFL draft choice. Now Pat Payton gets to work with Kevin Peoples. He's going to play opposite of Jack Pyburn, who they brought over from Florida. And you talk about a guy with top 32 upside. He's got to put it together. There's some off-field question marks, but just in terms of the size, the length, the athleticism, the ability to bend, when it is good, it is really, really good, and there's nobody like Patrick Payton in the portal. So I'm excited about that fit, and guess what? Pat Payton, Bear Alexander, you go down the list, Jaheim Otis, they got 1 year to figure it out. So if you're LSU, you're Colorado, you're one of these schools, in terms of the risk here, you're mitigating that with a lot of it because these guys are incentivized to go out there, put their best foot forward, because if they don't do that, then they're going to lose a lot of money at the next level as well.
Patrick Payton, one of many great additions for LSU. We'll dig into their class a little bit later, but we want to say thank you, Coop. We know you're hard at work in San Antonio with the All-American Bowl, and you can check out more of his coverage at 247sports.